Finally today, Wired asked something that I've been wondering about myself recently. If work really is going more remote, and if the tech companies really believe it is, because they're leading the way forward toward that future, why are all the big tech companies then still building out office space at such a furious clip? Quote, "What gives? It all comes down in large part to simple math. Silicon Valley's giants are growing too fast to loosen their grip on physical space, even if, in some cases, they might want to. At the time of Zuckerberg's remote work comments, internal surveys showed that most employees were eager to get back to the office. And Zuckerberg said the transition to remote work could take 10 years. Meanwhile, in the last year alone, Facebook grew its headcount by 13,000, mostly in product and engineering, putting the total number of employees at more than 58,000. Alphabet added 16,000 for a total of 135,000. Those figures don't include thousands of contractors who also keep their campuses running. In the depths of the pandemic, quote, it's easy to lose track of the bigger picture, says Mark Murrow, a senior fellow at the Brookings Institution who studies how cities attract high-tech development. For decades, Murrow has been searching for evidence of decentralization, the spreading out of talent and wealth enabled by the so-called death of distance. The idea was that technology would make it possible for people to work from anywhere, making offices and cities less relevant. What we got was the opposite. Fast-growing tech firms clustered in a few cities, as did what Murrow defines as innovation jobs in science and technology. Other cities grew, and technology companies did expand elsewhere, but tech hubs like San Jose and Seattle simply grew faster. With most people still working remotely, it's hard to draw long-term conclusions, says Robert Sammons, director of Bay Area research for Cushman & Wakefield, a real estate brokerage. One thing that is known, he says, is that markets like San Francisco were overheated before the virus. Costs were little barrier to wealthy tech giants, but smaller companies were being pushed out, and even the largest firms had trouble finding enough space downtown. The tech campuses were changing too. They had become more dispersed, reflecting a desire to be closer to where people actually live. New proposals have included more housing and less office space, often in response to pressure from communities facing spiraling housing costs, but also reflecting the changing needs for the companies themselves. Google's San Jose project is typical of that model, closer to where many of its workers live, and not every inch of space needs to hold a desk. In the near term, it might be more prudent to focus less on who's leaving for Texas and more on the changes happening within the Bay Area. Workers, given remote options, may take them, but it's hard to uproot yourself from your home, your work life, without a real tug to someplace else. You might figure a long commute is more tolerable if it's done twice a week, and that it's time to buy a bigger place with room for an office or live in a preferred school district. With a company like Salesforce, it's hard not to wonder what will become of its enormous tower, which came to symbolize the harnessing of San Francisco's fate to tech, and what that will mean for the surrounding area. How many climbing gyms can you put in a 61-story tower? Omara asks. Individual neighborhoods may be reshaped depending on who comes back and what form that return takes. The companies, for their part, say they're still working that out, end quote.